Have you ever met a really intelligent person who didn't really know how smart they were? What was your experience with them? I work in manufacturing, so we get a lot of uneducated people. There are a lot of people out there who are smart, but for various reasons weren't properly served by the public schools. They might be barely illiterate, or can hardly string two words together coherently, but they solve problems beautifully, or always have workable ideas, or they talk about ideas, rather than people or events. It's hard to quantify, but you know it when you see it. You hit the nail on the head. I started out in R&D engineering, but I was responsible for several product lines on top of some new product lines. There was one product line that was manufactured on a fairly complicated machine that only a few people knew how to troubleshoot and repair, myself being one of them. I was at home one night and got a call that the system went down, so I drove to work, walked in, and it was running. The operator was sitting in the corner just doodling in his notebook. I said, "Hey, I got a call that this wasn't running." "Yeah. So, it's running now, what changed?" "I don't know." "Aha, did you fix it?" "Maybe." Over time I realized that this guy was way more capable than he was letting on. He eventually told me that he plays dumb, so they don't overload him with responsibility, since he knows he won't get a pay raise or promotion out of it. I was a bit naive at the time, and couldn't understand why someone would have that perspective. Oh, I understand now. Anytime I had an R&D run, I started trying to get him on my team. Eventually I got him transferred to the department I managed and trained him up on technician duties, pushing him for a promotion. Criminal defense lawyer here. Had a client who was a low-level drug dealer and gun runner. Most street-level guys have a very different type of intelligence that doesn't translate well to the white-collar world. Many of my clients, asked to read case law, I've only met one who could read it, digest it, and discuss it intelligently with me. This guy, he'd do his own research from the jail, which isn't uncommon, but this guy did it well, and would actually send me relevant cases that were helpful to the issues in his case. And when I explained to him why some were not helpful, he got it, asked good questions, and used that discussion to inform future research. There are a lot of inmates who consider themselves jailhouse lawyers. This guy was smart enough to actually be one. I think about him a lot and wonder what his life would have been like if he was fortunate enough to be afforded with the same opportunities during childhood that I enjoyed. I've got a PhD and work in a field where so many people have PhDs that they don't even mention them. To this day, I suspect that the smartest person I've ever met was a kid I taught at a GED learning center in the middle of a pretty rough area of a big city. I've met plenty of people who were exceptionally smart in one or maybe two dimensions, but this guy was across the board. He'd turn it on now and then, like when we were playing chess, and one time when he made a reference to something in French of all things, and then he'd just kind of smile. Like it was enough to just briefly show the rest of us how smart he was. It was almost like he was a self-aware Will Hunting, not that cartoonishly smart, of course, but very smart, aware of it, and aware of his station in life. I have absolutely no doubt that if he'd had my advantages since birth, he'd be a rock star in whatever field he was in. But instead, I'd see him hanging around a corner store, and he may have been a low-level dealer. I have no idea what's become of him, but I hope it's for the best. I taught algebra to inmates briefly, and the number of guys who told me they were too stupid to learn math, while being able to convert odd measurements between metric and imperial in their heads on the fly, was too damn high. I'd like to go back in time and kick all those elementary school teachers who told them they were stupid. Actually, I've run into plenty of racist, classist elementary school teachers currently teaching, but still haven't kicked them, even though they deserve it. I just did 7 years, and I've ran into a few guys like that over the years. They usually live in the law library and spend years, decades even trying to get back in front of a judge. Most of us respect them, and seek them out for help with our own cases, but some do mock those guys behind their backs as being crazy or delusional. I have seen one of those crazy guys get back, and it was beautiful. I felt silly approaching them with my peanuts of a case and relatively short sentence, while they have been spending hours a day fighting for their lives in the law library. My buddy told me about one of them. Don't be shy, go ask him to help you, he loves any opportunity to fuck over the state. It makes me all the angrier in my state, how much more difficult they made it to access law materials. Most places I know no longer let you access hard books, and usually 1,300 guys share 5 computers, some of which are down. Also, I have a ton of empathy for the guys who never had to use a computer until then. I'm pretty well versed on the PC and I had difficulty with the law library system they had. I couldn't find shit or navigate it to save my life. I'm volunteer staff at a math summer camp targeted at children who like doing math. Most of the kids that we get are the standard doing well in school with good grades to prove it type. But it frequently happens that some kid is signed up and the parents tell us that their child doesn't really do well in school in general, or math in particular, but they just like doing math-related puzzles. That's cool, because that's all we ask for. And often enough these kids come with very interesting insights and solutions, because they happen to approach the problems from a different angle than the majority. They may be quite intelligent, but not in a way that expresses itself well within the standard framework of education. The same thing happens on the social level. A few years back we got a sign up where the parents warned us that their son had great difficulties making friends, or socializing in general. On the first day of camp, the kid took a chessboard and went to sit down to play against himself. Perfectly fine. But not much later another boy walks up to him and asks if he can join the game. They start playing and talking, and they end up being practically inseparable the rest of the week. The kid that had difficulties making friends just made a new best friend faster than anyone else there. Just need to give people the right environment. As a teacher in a subject deemed not important by everyone, i.e., an electives teacher, this is the problem I've been screaming about since I entered the teaching profession. We talk the talk and do the endless PDs on multiple intelligences and diverse learning, but all we ever do is find ways to water down a lesson so that the absolute slowest kids in the room can get it, and then to add insult to injury, we never fully embrace the different learning techniques. We hover over standardized practice. In my district every classroom starts the same. Do now activator, teacher demos a new skill, students try, teacher talks about new skill, students discuss new skill, students practice independently, then answer an exit ticket. Every class. Math, ELA, Phys Ed, pottery, all of them. If you don't have an agenda board and learning objectives written explaining what state standard today's lesson applies to, you get a bad evaluation by administration. We talk about learning being student guided, but it never is. And we don't give people who think differently a chance to succeed. People who are great teachers without actually being a teacher. I've always thought people who can teach others are incredibly smart, because they're aware enough of what they know to present it to others in such a way they can understand it. The guy I used to work with was a phenomenal teacher of all things paints, powder coating and color matching blending. He had a real passion for it, and it showed in the manner in which he taught and demonstrated what he was talking about. In saying that, he was also very highly strung, and had some mental health issues that held him back from doing great things, and so believed he was an idiot. He wasn't, but no amount of telling him would help. I've done this my whole life, and never realized it was an actual thing. I talk to myself a lot, describing things, conversations, etc., and whenever I'm doing something new, I always imagined that I was teaching someone else at the same time, which made me think that I must understand what I'm doing. I then questioned my other self by asking questions that I would ask if I was that other person, which, now I'm writing this down, sounds weird. But I never knew it was something that other people did until about a month ago, when I was explaining this weird kink in my behavior to my wife. When she was asking me who I was talking to, she said it was a thing that you were supposed to do. I've long thought I've had ADHD my whole life. I've got all the classic symptoms of attention span, fidgeting, etc., but having reached 41 without taking any meds, I think I'm happy just to be me. I feel like people should be more aware that it's normal to struggle and feel stupid while learning new concepts. Then, they'd be less discouraged, and less likely to give up. This can be the curse of being highly intelligent. Never having to put much time or effort into learning something is great until a subject comes along that requires it. Then, all those people who learned how to work hard to understand something keep going, and a highly intelligent person has a challenge he or she has never seen before, and either has to totally change his or her study habits, life habits in his or her late teens or 20s, or determine that he or she isn't smart enough. Either way, there will be a crisis of confidence, and lessons that should have come early come really late. One of my many brilliant friends had to check in somewhere, because just the first 2 weeks at MIT were destroying his confidence. Dude went to IMO, the best school in Dallas for boys. Kindernuts, my closest friend to this day, would be up until 4 a.m. doing homework in high school. Top 5 his class as well. The aforementioned other brilliant friend studied hard before, and was very humble. I'm one of the idiots who thought everything was easy peas, and then realized I never learned to study. I wish you the best, mate. My oldest daughter refused to draw with crayons when she was little. It never came out on paper the way she imagined it in her head, so she wouldn't even try. Eventually she started playing with wax strings called Bernardos, and she could make things with those, and tweak them until they were perfect. Then she would use a pencil to trace around them on a paper. Now, years later, she's quite good at drawing, and is constantly making things. My youngest would just scribble something on the paper, and then look at it to see what she could find in it, and then she'd declare that's what it was. I had a kid in my class that never took anything seriously, skipped class, brought alcohol to class, and did numerous other things. You name it, he probably did it. But man, that MF knew his shit whenever he paid attention. He understood things when other people were struggling to learn whatever was being taught that day: math, science, English, reading, etc. It makes me a little sad, because he was always a troublemaker, but deep down I knew that he was very smart, and was capable of doing good in school. He just never chose to do it, or generally just didn't care at this point. I think he got involved with the wrong crowd early on, unfortunately. My dad. He's dyslexic, and growing up in the education system in the 70s didn't provide any support, so he's all but illiterate. He left school at 15 with no qualifications. He always says he's stupid, and it upsets me so much he won't believe it when we tell him he's not. Me, my mom and my sister all have education beyond degree level, and he's smarter than any of us. He's eloquent, but sometimes mispronounces new words that he's heard in a different accent. Our accent is heavy on the R sound, so I've noticed him adding it to words that don't have R's, but of course he's never seen it written down to know. He watches historical documentaries, and tells us about how that links with the one he watched a couple of years prior. He once drove me to university 3 hours away using the route he'd driven in reverse once without checking a map. I wish he could see himself as intelligent. Data, since it seems like a lot of people have a connection with this comment and will enjoy this story, he did actually do a speech for my wedding. I was worried about asking him, because I wasn't sure how he'd manage, and didn't want to put pressure on him, but he was keen to do it. My mum made cue cards with picture hints, and they did not help him. He just had it written out, and learned it off by heart, and used cue cards with the full speech to help him. He can read it when he knows what it says, and his speech was by far the most confident and well-performed speech out of all of us. Give him a birthday card with more words than happy birthday and he's not happy, but he can smash out a full-on speech with no hesitation. My mother, she was raised in a poor, abusive family, and left school very early to escape. Even now she'll say how she is uneducated, which is true, but she isn't stupid. She raised a bunch of us without much money, and was always resourceful and canny at making ends meet. She can do fairly complicated math in her head, does extensive research before making large purchases, forwards me screenshots of quite sophisticated scam emails, and tells me why they're fake. She's 78 now, and has always embraced new tech. Has no trouble using her smartphone or her PC, she even troubleshoots for her neighbors. She still lives in the same poverty-stricken area we grew up in, and is often helping her neighbors advocate for themselves, writing letters, telling them who to contact, and what to say. She's also a keen observer of humans. She sees them as they are, and takes them as they are with no judgment. She was always progressive for her time, and passed down zero racism or other prejudices to us kids. I wonder what she could have done if she had the opportunities she made damn sure we had. My dad grew up believing he was dumb and would never amount to anything. His teachers all hated him, and the first time he went to university he was kicked out. Around the same time as I started university, my mum finally convinced him to try again, to get a higher education himself. He's often said that he's too stupid to go back to school, but he speaks about 6 languages fluently, has so many new interesting history facts that, whenever we watch any movie, we always have to pause at least 4 times for a lengthy discussion about it, and he remembers more book quotes than anyone I've ever met. He grew up in communist Hungary and East Germany, and he has, since then, climbed mountains and been scuba diving in the Atlantic among a bunch of other adventures. Whatever the discussion, he's got a story to tell. He's the coolest dad ever, but for as long as I can remember my family has struggled financially, since he couldn't get a job that paid enough. It makes me so happy that he's finally reaching his full potential now at 51 years old, and we're all super proud of him. He dreams of being a teacher one day. He will be the best teacher his future students could ever wish for. I knew a guy who very smart with the ability to be extremely manipulative, and had no idea. He always got good grades in school, often without studying much at all. What was more impressive was his ability to read people's body language, vocal tone fluctuation, and micro-expressions. Often, he would know what emotion someone was feeling, and how best to proceed. The guy was a master of subtle communication, such as mirroring and framing conversations, so he would be dominant. He was able to use this social intelligence to get with girls, but he would also use it to get people to do things he wanted. One of the clearest examples of manipulation that I know of is that he got his friend to break up with his longtime girlfriend. His friend's girlfriend was kind of a drag and would be a little annoying around the group. So, he subtly started to slip in emotional and logical suggestions whenever he saw his friend in a moment of emotional vulnerability. Within a week, his friend ended the relationship. I am this person, and luckily my mom realized it before it got out of hand. It later becomes more a subconscious habit than on purpose, but still horrifying to realize that you can be that type of person. Seeing a behavioral therapist now, to help me navigate social situations without hurting others or myself, and to use my own body language to portray my emotions, and not mirror others. I'm still in high school, so at least it's getting fixed early on. Former coworker of mine. He came to Germany as a refugee in his young teenage years, had trouble in school due to language barrier, poor support, tough family situation, typical refugee problems. Then he was unemployed, and Job Center, part of German welfare dealing with unemployment, sent him to the security company I worked at that time, because conditions of employment are almost non-existent in this field. When he was on my team for an event, I, as team leader, had to show him the ropes. The event lasted 10 consecutive nights, and we faced several different challenges that were part of the job. Every now and then he had a genius idea how to solve the particular problem. The following year I got him on my team whenever I could, trained him, and when I left the company, he inherited my position as team leader. I don't actually know whether he knew about how smart he is, but he was so insecure in the beginning I boldly assume he didn't. We have a paid summer internship program for juniors and seniors pursuing construction management degrees. 5 years ago, we had a young woman who came into the program in her junior year. She was very tiny in stature and very quiet, but we soon learned giant in intellect and loud where it counted. The way we operate is each intern will spend 3 weeks on a different project, learning a different role within the organization. 3 weeks on site as a superintendent intern, 3 weeks on site with safety, 3 with project management, and 3 on site with quality control. After each period, I received a call praising her ingenuity and ability to adapt and improvise in any situation. At the end of the internship, we have a plus delta review of their performance, and based on that review, we make a determination on whether to offer them a place the following summer. In the case of a senior, we determine if we want to extend them a full-time employment offer. Every review she received from each department all said the same thing: hire her now. We extended an offer for a salaried position, part-time, from that point through her senior year, along with tuition reimbursement. This young lady still amazes everyone every single day. She's 25 years old, making an amazing salary and absolutely dominating any project she's given. If she doesn't know it today, she'll practically be an expert tomorrow. She's incredibly impressive. I can see her having my job one day, operations director. Hopefully, it's after I retire.